Good afternoon, members of the jury. I am Katie Youngblood, an attorney representing Polly Patient, which is no longer with us. We're so her beneficiaries, and I am before you all to present the leniency and negligence that the hospital staff at Shriners Benevolent Charity Hospital obtains, in which Polly's life had fallen victim of in her most desperate time of need during her visit that was rushed into the ER. To give a backstory, Malpractice Mary is a nurse and has been a nurse at Shriners Hospital for 10 years upon her graduation from nursing school, in which builds her a lot of credibility as not only an employee, but as a nurse as well. She was approached one day by Managing Mike, which is a manager at the hospital, and informs her that the hospital is short-staffed and that he needs her to work in the ER the following day. She is not experienced, and therefore she explains her concerns to Managing Mike and says that she is not experienced. It's a very fast-paced type of medical treatment that she is not used to, because the oncology floor that she has been used to for 10 years at this hospital is a very slow-paced kind of medical treatment. And despite her concerns, Managing Mike disregards this and tells her to report for duty the next day, in which she does. That day, Polly Patient was rushed into the hospital from an apparent opioid overdose, and she was showing symptoms such as pinpointed pupils, breathing problems that were slow and shallow, unresponsiveness, blue and gray appearances in her fingertips and her lips, floppy arms and legs, gurgling, snorting, and Dr. Decisive yells to give Polly 1 milligram of Narcan stat, and as he was working on a different patient from a car wreck. Mary, because of her inexperience, she panics, and Polly dies because she never gets the Narcan. Mary then runs out of the ER, and Polly's family is there waiting, stops Mary, asks her what her status is. Mary freaks out and is very overwhelmed, crying, and said, well, if they had showed me where the Narcan is, she'd still be alive, which also violated another realm of law in which we will go into. So who and why are we suing? We are suing Defendant Mary, Dr. Decisive, and the hospital. Tennessee Code Annotated Section 2926.115. If a defendant acted with less than or failed to act with ordinary reasonable care, and an approximate result of the defendant's negligence, or negligent act rather, or lack thereof, the plaintiff's suffering injuries which would have not otherwise occurred. So meaning, if it wasn't for Managing Mike's decision to put Mary there, if it wasn't Mary's panic attack, Polly's death would not have occurred. Now, an opioid overdose can be very lethal, but can also be very much prevented. Narcan is actually an opioid antagonist. It prevents it, it reverses it. Narcan actually binds to the same receptors as the opioid, displaces it, and it during the process it temporarily undoes or reverses the harmful effects that opioids have with our body. So Polly could have been given this Narcan, and had Mary given her this Narcan, then Dr. Decisive could have further saved her life, meaning that this overdose could have been very much prevented. So, because of all of this information, because of the statute and the violation of the HIPAA laws, which is a short term for the Health Portability and Accountability Act, in which actually requires healthcare workers and organizations to exercise compliance with administrative, technical, and physical security and confidentiality between their the healthcare workers and organizations and their patients, in which when she yelled, she might have been still alive if they shouldn't have shown me the Narcan, she violated that as well as the statute that was the hospital violated, as I said earlier. So the proximate cause of this death of Polly was managing Mike's decision, and the hospital's um, standards of care, in which being so lenient, and the direct causation was Mary and her panic attack and her inexperience, in which all could have been prevented. But instead of the hospital giving priority to quality and sufficient care that is ethical and timely, they gave convenience and profit a priority instead, in which this was a consequence, or Polly's death, which was a consequence and which can never be reversed, can never be replaced, and it will, for her family and friends, will forever be pain and suffering, and she will forever be gone because of a reckless mistake. And I hope the jury and the court recognizes this as well.